Welcome to Frances Quilts, the site dedicated to the wonderful art of quilting, with a few other fun things thrown in as well. If you like what you see here, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so that you can be notified of future videos. Hey guys, welcome back to Frances Quilts. Today we are in week 2, that is block number 2 in our challenge of 12 ways to quilt a sawtooth star. I hope you had a great time last week working with all of the straight lines. If you had trouble with those, this week is all curvy, so you should do just fine. I think this is an easy block to quilt this week, and I think you'll enjoy it. Before I go any further though, if you haven't already watched the introductory video, I would encourage you to find that and watch it, just to give you some ideas about other ways that you can be involved in the challenge, especially if you don't have time to actually sit down and quilt. There's some other things that you can do. To find this introductory video, you can go to my website, which is francesquilts.com. There is a challenge tab up at the top, and under that is listed the 12 ways to quilt a sawtooth star. If you'll click on that page, it has all the resources that you'll need. It has PDFs of blocks that you can practice on. It has a link to the pattern for the sawtooth star block. It has all the information that you might need. So be sure and check out that link. I've had a question from Mary about how to get the quilt underneath your domestic machine. And so today I want to talk about puddling. No, I don't have a little puppy running around leaving little tinkle spots all over my house. Puddling is what you do when you want to get a quilt, a larger quilt, underneath the needle of a domestic machine. They used to say that you should roll the quilt, and that just gave you this great big long tube of things that you couldn't move it around if you needed to. So the best way to do is to go to the block that you're going to quilt and put it under your needle, and then just puddle the rest of the quilt all the way around that area. Be sure your table is big enough so that things don't fall off the edge. In my case, I have a couple of other tables pushed up against my domestic machine. If you have trouble with it sticking in your lap, maybe you're having trouble with the quilt puddling down in your lap, put a pillow in your lap so that the quilt can hang over the top of it, and that will help as well. Anything that you can do to keep that quilt at a level height all the way, that's what's going to help you. So remember, puddling. Finally, last week I was talking about how these different designs might lay out on a quilt, and I said that I hadn't had much time to think about it. Well, I did some thinking, and it looks to me that I'm going to have about 6 designs, so about half of them are going to have a lot of straight lines in them, particularly on the outside edges of that block. So those 6 I am going to place in this array. I'll have the straight lines in the top, all 4 corners, and then in the 2 center blocks, and then I will have the curvier designs filling in the others. Now, there's nothing that says you have to do it this way. This is just how I'm going to do it, and I thought you might be interested to see. Before we get to the design for this block, let me show you one thing that I've added this week off camera. Because I was moving this quilt around so much, it was going from my design wall to take photos of, to the machine, to the ironing board, to my drawing table, just all over the place, and it started becoming unbasted. I'm using a fusible batting, which I love, but it just wasn't holding it with all of the movement that I was having. So I decided to go ahead and do some stabilizing stitching, and you may want to do this on yours as well. What I did was just stitch 1/4 inch inside these seams all the way along. And what I'm going to do is at some point I'll come along and I will quilt some sort of a design in this channel. So that I can do later, but just putting these straight stitches in helps to stabilize the quilt. One thing I am going to do here with mine is I'm going to have some of the lines run under and some of the lines run over the top. So it's going to be kind of woven in here. And let me show you the reason that I did that. If you look right here, I did a really bad job of piecing this because it comes here and then it doesn't go there, it moves over. So I'm trying to do something with the sashing that may hide that a little bit. So my thought is, if this is coming along and this is on top and this one is going under, there's a good chance that that is not going to show as much in the end run. One of our goals for this quilt is to think about each block as a whole, rather than thinking about, okay, this is a triangle, this is a square, this is another square. We're trying to look at it as a whole and do a design that will just kind of bring the whole block together. For this second block, this is the design that we're going to be looking at. I think it's a lot of fun. You see there's a lot of curves to this one, where last time we had all straight lines, this one is all curves. We can use rulers for some of it if we want to, or you can freehand it, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. One of the things that's important with these blocks is thinking about how you can quilt them without having to start and stop so much. Now, that's not the end of the world if we have to break thread and start over again, but anytime we can do it continuously, that makes it even better. This actually looks fairly complicated, so let's break it down just a little bit. If you look at it, there's actually a series of arcs from here to here in the center, and then back here, and these are big arcs. These are going from the inside point to the inside point. Then there are small arcs that come out like this, that are coming here and here, and on around. Okay, whoops, and one more right there. Now, then we have our dot to dot that's going to come out here. And then we have these big petal sort of things that we have. I found these easier to quilt if I quilted the big one in the middle first, and then I did the two on the side. Same here, big one in the middle first, two on the side. If you need to, you can put some registration marks. You may want to put some registration marks right in here. Can you see that? And right here, and here, and here, just so that you have something to be working out toward. So let's go back to this one and talk about how we might quilt this. I think when I do it, I'm going to start with these big arcs in the center. And when I come to here, I'm going to go ahead and quilt these three. And then I'm going to come to here and quilt these three. And then here and quilt those. And here and quilt those. Now that I'm back here, I can start doing my smaller arcs. So if I come here, while I'm here, I can do these two dot to dots. And then I can do these three. And then I can do here. Now that one's already been done, so I can keep going to here, dot to dot, and three petals. Then come back here and here, same thing, dot to dot and petals, and then here and here, dot to dot and petals. Now I'm going to have to concentrate because I'm afraid I'm going to get distracted by doing all of these arcs, and I may mess up with it, but we'll see. Now, I know some of you are saying, arcs by hand? Really? I have to do that? So let's talk about some different options. You can use arced rulers. You can use all different kinds. There are these, something that's similar to this. It has a very flat curve. If I use those for my arcs, I would have just a very, very flat curve going in there. You can also use something like these. These are just some larger arcs. There's this one, and then this one's a little bit bigger. These are just rulers that honestly I have no idea where I bought them from or who made them. They're just some that I have in my stash. I might use this one for doing my small arcs, and the main thing I want to be thinking about here is hitting this corner and hitting that point right there. So however I have to position my ruler so that I can come out and hit that. That's what I want to do. I think for the larger arcs, I would use something like this that's a little bit bigger ruler. So again, I'm going to come to the point here, and I'm going to come to the point there, and that would be my arc that I would quilt. Now you're saying, what if I don't have rulers to use? So let's talk some options. Now this may be a little bit confusing to look at, but I decided if I was going to tell you that you could quilt this without rulers, I really should prove to myself that you could. So I just drew out a little section of the quilt, of the block, just so I could try it. Now I used my ruler for these first two arcs right here, and then I stopped, and instead I just used my eye to do the rest of these. Now, you know, sure, there are some little differences here, but it actually looks pretty good. I was just, as I was quilting these the sashing earlier, was listening to a interview with Angela Walters. You know, I love her, and she was talking about doing these arcs, that the most important thing is to hit those points right there. So when you start this arc and you're machine quilting it, you know, kind of look where you're going, but not really. Look where you're trying to end up. And I think that is the best thing to do here. Several of them turned out really, really nice. That's a really nice one, and that's a nice one. And I think in the long run, you're really not going to notice if there are some slight imperfections in it. Now, these larger arcs, I did these first three with the ruler. And honestly, that's probably how I'm going to do them when I'm quilting this. This last one, I wanted to just see I'm not comfortable free motioning a line that long. So I actually took the ruler and drew out the line there with a washout pen, just so I had something to follow. So if you are quilting this free motion without rulers, I would suggest eyeball these, draw these in, and quilt on that line. When you get to these petals here, again, I found it easier to do the big ones and then add the little ones. And this is a don't do it this way. When I came along here, I got distracted and I thought, oh, I need to put dotted dots in there. So I put it in coming this direction. And I thought, that does not look right. That's because it's supposed to go this way. I'm supposed to come from this point in the center right here. So I think we're about ready to go to the machine with this one. Again, I'm just going to have to keep my wits about me to remember that when I quilt this first thing, I'm going to quilt these here and these. When I come around with my doubles, when I get to these corners, I'm going to have to quilt this and these before I move on. So let's see if I can do it. Well, here we are at the machine. This second block I think is going to quilt a whole lot faster than that first one did, and I'm sure you're all breathing a huge sigh of relief. I know that I certainly was. Since this block has a lot of curves in it, it is going to be, according to my placement, on one of the outside edges. So I have decided to place it right next to this one that we did last time with all of our nice straight lines in it. And we're going to come down here. As I mentioned to you, I am going to use the ruler for a part of it. I'm going to do the small arcs without the ruler, but the bigger ones I'm going to use the ruler for it. So again, if you do not have a ruler, I would suggest that you draw those arcs in before you quilt them. So let's start, and let's remember when I get to here, the thing I have to remember I'm going to do is I'm going to do these petals right here. So let's see how we go. So my goal here is to work from this point to this point. I'm going to butt my ruler up against my ruler foot here, and I'm going to come over here and try to find about 1/4 of an inch away from that point right there. And remember, if the ruler slips a little bit, you can fudge it when you get over there. So let's take a few small stitches to get us started. Cool, that worked beautifully. Now I'm a little concerned about doing these on the side. I know I can do them if they are, if I'm facing them straight down, but I'm not sure about this. But we'll give them a try and see. Let's do the big one first in the center. After I made that initial curve, my eye was looking down at this point right here to make sure that I got back to that point in time. So now let's see if I can do this one on the side. Same thing, I'm looking toward that point to make sure that I hit it. That worked okay, and then one more. Cool, I like that. Now let's do the next curve. Okay, now let's do our petals. And of course, we're having thread trouble. I'll be back. Well, it's a good thing that we can cut this video because I ended up with my bobbin case spring coming out, and I had to Google and figure out how to replace that. So we're back again a few minutes later. So let's keep going. Okay, now I'm ready to start my short arcs. So I'm going to come from here to this corner, and then I will quilt my 3 petals here and quilt my dot to dots in here. Here we go. All right, now let's do a 2-hop. We're going to come to the center here and then out to the next corner. Well, I'm pleased with how that turned out. I do think because of the size, I might go in and add a filler design of some sort right in the center of that block, some pebbles or something simple like that. I'll be back. Okay, let's do a little deep dive look at this block. Obviously, it was very much easier than last time, took a lot less time to do. We did keep these dot to dot things going, and I like how that looks. Again, I think it gives it a little bit of movement around there. Not that this block needs a whole lot more movement, but that's okay. I'm happy with how all of these turned out. Even though I didn't mark them, I just free motion them. A couple of them are a little flat, but you know what? In the overall effect, the block looks great. This in here, this pebbles that I went back and put in, those are fine, and you wouldn't have to have them, but I think that it does just add a little bit more. What I might do if I did this again is instead of doing this is I might just come in and do some echoing in there, and could even come in here and do some echoing in here, and I may still go back in and do that. We'll see. I just feel like it may need a little bit more in those areas to fill in that block, but that can wait. I can do that at some other point in time, but I think we will call, for right now, we'll call this block finished. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next week on Francis Quilts. Bye for now. Welcome to Francis Quilts, the site dedicated to the wonderful art of quilting, with a few other fun things thrown in as well. If you like what you see here, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so that you can be notified of future videos. Remember, if you like what you've seen, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please check out my website and daily blog at francisquilts.com, and I can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Francis Quilts. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope to see you again soon.